My grandmother didn't leave me a single dollar. Those were the first words that came out of my mouth after the lawyer finished reading her will. My younger brother smiled, not a big smile, just the kind that disappears before anyone can call it out. But I saw it. And once I did, I couldn't unsee it. For a moment, I honestly wondered if my grandmother had stopped loving me before she died. Then my brother folded the papers, thanked the attorney, and said, "Grandma knew exactly what she was doing." I believed him, at least for the next 3 days. Until the lawyer called me and said 5 words that turned everything upside down. "Arthur, we found another recording. My name is Arthur, and I'm 45 years old. My younger brother, Ryan, is 41. We grew up in a quiet town outside Columbus, Ohio, in a family that always looked normal from the outside. Inside, things were more complicated. Our father left when Ryan was 8 and I was 12. He didn't die. He didn't disappear. He simply decided another family mattered more than ours. Mom worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat, but the person who really raised us was Grandma Eleanor. She lived in the same white farmhouse she'd bought with Grandpa in the early 70s. Every Saturday she'd make pancakes from scratch, complain about the baseball team, and somehow convince us that fixing a broken fence was more fun than watching cartoons. She wasn't rich. At least, that's what everyone thought. When Grandpa passed away, she quietly invested the money from selling a piece of farmland no one even remembered they owned. She never talked about finances, but over the years those investments grew into something substantial. Only after she passed did we learn her estate was worth just over $3 million. Money changes people, sometimes before they even have it. Grandma died peacefully in her sleep at 87. The funeral was exactly the way she would have wanted: simple flowers, old country songs, neighbors sharing stories that made everyone laugh through their tears. Ryan cried harder than I expected. I hugged him afterward. "We've still got each other," I told him. He hugged me back. Always. I meant it. Looking back now, I wonder if he did. 2 days later we met at the attorney's office. Besides Ryan and me, there was our mother, my wife Emily, Ryan's wife Nicole, and Mr. Dawson, the family attorney who had handled Grandma's affairs for over 20 years. The office smelled like old books and coffee. Nobody spoke much. Mr. Dawson adjusted his glasses. "Your grandmother left very detailed instructions." He began reading. Grandma donated nearly $300,000 to local charities. She established scholarships at the community college. Several longtime friends received small personal gifts. Her church received enough money to renovate its food pantry. Everything sounded exactly like her. Then he reached the family section. My chest tightened. "To my grandson Ryan." Ryan straightened in his chair. "I leave the farmhouse, surrounding property, investment accounts, and the remainder of my estate." Silence. I waited for my name. It never came. Mr. Dawson continued. "To my grandson Arthur, I leave my wedding Bible, Grandpa's pocket watch, and my love, which has never wavered." That was it. No money, no property, nothing. I actually looked around the room because I thought pages had been skipped. Ryan cleared his throat. Mom looked confused. Emily squeezed my hand under the table. I couldn't process what I'd just heard. Grandma and I had been close my entire life. After Mom worked late shifts, Grandma helped me with homework. She came to every baseball game she could. When my daughter was born, she drove 2 hours just to hold her for 15 minutes before heading back home, because she didn't want to get in the way. She never played favorites. Or at least I never believed she did. Mr. Dawson finished reading. "No contest clause," he added, Anyone challenging the will forfeits any inheritance. Ryan nodded almost immediately. I understand. Understand? I barely understood my own name at that point. I asked quietly, Did Grandma ever explain this? The attorney hesitated. No. Ryan answered before he could. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. His tone wasn't cruel. It was almost rehearsed. Emily looked at him. Arthur practically lived with your grandmother growing up. Ryan shrugged. Apparently she had her reasons. Something about the way he said it bothered me. Not angry, not emotional, certain. Like he'd already accepted this outcome long before any of us walked into that office. Mom finally spoke. This doesn't sound like your grandmother. Ryan turned toward her. Are you saying she wasn't capable of making her own decisions? No, Mom replied softly. I'm saying she loved both of my boys. So did Dad, Ryan answered. The room froze. That was a low blow. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Ryan sighed. I'm sorry, but it didn't sound like he was. The meeting ended awkwardly. Outside, Emily asked if I wanted to go home. I couldn't answer. I just stood in the parking lot staring at the attorney's building. Ryan walked past carrying a cardboard box filled with Grandma's paperwork. Arthur. I looked up. I know you're upset. You think? He ignored the sarcasm. Grandma trusted me to take care of everything. Everything. The house, the land, the investments. I laughed once. So what exactly did she trust me with? He looked at the pocket watch in my hand. You got what mattered. Then he climbed into his truck and drove away. Emily watched him disappear down the road. I don't like this, she whispered. Neither did I, not because of the money, because none of it felt like Grandma, and for the first time in my life, I found myself wondering whether the woman who raised me had been hiding something from me all along. For the next couple of days, I kept telling myself to let it go. People make unexpected decisions all the time. Maybe Grandma had believed Ryan needed the money more than I did. He had 2 kids still living at home, while Emily and I had already helped our daughter through college. Maybe she thought I was financially stable enough to stand on my own. None of those explanations felt good, but they felt possible. What didn't feel possible was how Ryan started acting almost immediately after the funeral. The day after the will was read, he had movers at the farmhouse, not to bring his own furniture in, to clear Grandma's things out. Emily and I drove over because Mom wanted a few family photo albums before anything was packed away. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch swing where Grandma used to drink her morning coffee was already gone. So were Grandpa's old rocking chairs. Boxes lined the front yard. Strangers carried out furniture that had been in our family longer than I'd been alive. I stood there for a second, trying to make sense of it. Ryan came out carrying a clipboard. Oh. I didn't know you were coming, I called. I've been busy. I can see that. Emily walked toward the house while I stayed outside with him. You're moving awfully fast. He shrugged. I'm cleaning the place up. 3 days after the funeral, it has to be done eventually. I looked past him. Grandma's kitchen table, the one where we'd eat thousands of meals, was being wrapped in moving blankets. Where's that going? I sold it. You? What? What? It was antique. You sold it already. He sighed like I was being unreasonable. I've got expenses. You inherited $3 million. It's not liquid yet. I stared at him. He didn't even flinch. That bothered me more than anything. Inside the house, Emily found Mom sitting in Grandma's bedroom. She was crying quietly while holding a faded photo album. Ryan had told the movers to box up everything in that room before asking if anyone wanted keepsakes. Mom looked at me. This doesn't feel right. No. It feels like she's disappearing. I couldn't argue with that. The house already felt unfamiliar. Grandma's quilts were gone. The family photographs had been taken off the walls. Even the smell of fresh cinnamon she'd somehow always managed to keep in the kitchen had been replaced by cardboard and dust. Ryan walked into the room. "Did you find what you needed?" Mom nodded. "I'd like Eleanor's recipe box." Ryan hesitated. "I actually promised that to Nicole." Mom blinked. "Your grandmother told me years ago that I could have it." "I'm sorry." His voice wasn't apologetic. "It's already packed." Mom lowered her eyes. "All right." Emily looked at me. She knew exactly what I was thinking. Ryan had never cared about Grandma's recipes. Nicole certainly hadn't. The recipe box wasn't about cooking. It was about taking one more piece of Grandma away from the rest of us. On the drive home, neither Emily nor I spoke much. Finally, she broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When was the last time you saw Grandma alone?" I thought about it. "About 3 weeks before she passed." "What did you two talk about?" I smiled despite everything. "She complained that I let my lawn grow too long." Emily laughed. "That sounds like her." Then she asked about work, about our daughter, about whether I'd fixed the leak under the kitchen sink. "Anything unusual?" I frowned. There was one thing. "What?" "What?" She asked if I still believed that people eventually show you who they really are. Emily looked over. "What did you say?" I told her yes. "And what did she say?" I remembered her exact words because they'd seemed so random at the time. Good, don't forget that. At the time, I'd assumed she was talking about an old neighbor. Now, I wasn't so sure. The following evening, Mom invited me over for dinner. Ryan didn't come. Apparently, he was too busy with estate paperwork. Halfway through the meal, Mom disappeared into the hallway and came back carrying a small tin box. "I found this while cleaning my closet." She handed it to me. Inside were dozens of birthday cards Grandma had sent me over the years. Every single one had handwritten notes. Some were funny, some offered advice. Some simply said she was proud of me. Then I found the last birthday card she'd ever given me. The handwriting looked shakier than usual. "Arthur, some truths take longer than others to come into the light. When the time comes, don't let anger make your decisions for you." There was no explanation, just her signature. I read it 3 times. Mom noticed. "What is it?" I handed her the card. She frowned. "That's strange. Did she ever say anything to you?" "No." "About Ryan?" She looked uncomfortable. There were moments. "What kind of moments?" Mom took a deep breath. "Over the last year, Ryan started visiting her a lot more. I thought that was a good thing." "So did I. Until Eleanor mentioned that Ryan kept insisting she needed help organizing her financial papers." I looked up. "What?" She laughed about it the first time, and after that, Mom hesitated. She stopped mentioning it. Something tightened in my chest. "You think he pressured her?" "I don't know." Mom shook her head quickly. "And I don't want to accuse my own son without proof. Neither did I. But for the first time, the possibility entered my mind. Not that Ryan had stolen money, that he had spent months making sure Grandma's final wishes became exactly what he wanted them to be. The next morning, my phone rang. The screen showed Mr. Dawson, the family attorney. His voice sounded different, uneasy. "Arthur, is everything okay? I need you to come to my office." "Why?" There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, "I found something that wasn't with your grandmother's will." "What kind of something?" "I'd rather show you in person." "Does Ryan know?" No. Another pause. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell him yet. Every instinct in my body suddenly came alive. As I grabbed my car keys, I had no idea that within the next hour, I'd hear my grandmother's voice one final time, and nothing in our family would ever be the same. I made the 40-minute drive to Mr. Dawson's office faster than I probably should have. The entire way there, my mind bounced between hope and disappointment. Maybe he'd found another letter. Maybe Grandma had forgotten to sign a document. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything. Or maybe I was about to embarrass myself by chasing something that didn't exist. Mr. Dawson was already waiting when I walked in. He closed the office door behind me. "You came alone?" I nodded. "You asked me to." "Good." He motioned for me to sit. On his desk was a small black flash drive. Nothing special about it. No label. No envelope. Just an ordinary piece of plastic that somehow had my full attention. "Where did you find it?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair. "Yesterday afternoon. In Grandma's house?" "No." He folded his hands together. "It was inside one of my office files." I frowned. "I don't understand." Neither did I. He opened a drawer and removed a thin manila folder. "About 6 months ago, your grandmother came to see me. She updated a few routine documents and asked me to store this flash drive. Why didn't you play it then?" "Because she specifically instructed me not to." He slid a sheet of paper across the desk. It was written in Grandma's unmistakable handwriting. "If you're reading this, I've passed away. Do not open the enclosed recording until after my will has been read. If everything goes the way I expect, Arthur should watch it first." I stared at the note. "If everything goes the way I expect," Mr. Dawson nodded slowly. "That's the sentence that worried me. You forgot about it." His face tightened. I wish I had a better excuse. He looked genuinely ashamed. The flash drive was placed inside the file instead of the evidence safe. After your grandmother died, I focused on preparing the estate documents. I didn't realize the recording was still in that folder until yesterday. So she wanted me to see this before anyone else. That's what she wrote. I swallowed. "Can we watch it?" He nodded. "I think that's exactly what she intended." He plugged the flash drive into his computer. The screen stayed black for a second, then the image appeared. Grandma sat in her favorite armchair. She was wearing the blue sweater she'd worn almost every winter. Behind her was the old living room clock. The date in the corner of the recording showed it had been made just over 5 months before she died. She smiled gently. "Arthur," just hearing her voice again hit me harder than I expected. I had to blink away tears before I could focus. "If you're watching this," she said, "then I'm gone." She paused to catch her breath. "And if Mr. Dawson followed my instructions, then you've already heard my will." She looked directly into the camera. "I'm afraid you're probably very hurt," I whispered. "Yeah." Grandma smiled sadly, as if she'd somehow heard me. "The first thing I need you to know is this." She leaned forward. "I did not stop loving you." My eyes filled immediately. "Not for one day." She rested her hands in her lap. "If you're angry with me, I understand. But please watch this until the very end before you make any decisions." Mr. Dawson and I exchanged a glance. Neither of us spoke. Grandma continued. "Families are complicated." She gave a tired little laugh. "More complicated than most people ever admit." Then her expression changed. It became serious. "Several months ago, Ryan started asking me questions about my finances. I felt my stomach drop. He said he wanted to help." She nodded slowly. "At first, I believed him. The room was completely silent except for her voice. But after a while, I noticed something. She reached beside her chair and picked up a notebook. He always seemed more interested in what I planned to leave behind than how I was actually feeling. I closed my eyes. Mom had been right. Grandma flipped through a few pages. I began writing down our conversations because something didn't feel right. She looked straight into the camera again. "I'm not saying Ryan is a bad man," she sighed. "But I believe he has convinced himself that wanting something badly enough makes it acceptable." I looked at Mr. Dawson. He looked just as stunned as I felt. Grandma continued, "Over the past year, Ryan has repeatedly encouraged me to simplify my estate." She smiled faintly. "He even brought me forms." "What?" I whispered. She nodded. "He said it would save everyone trouble." Her smile disappeared. But every version somehow left him with more than before. My heart started pounding. She wasn't making accusations. She was calmly describing exactly what had happened. I refused every time. She placed the notebook back on the table, until one afternoon she stopped talking. For several long seconds, when she finally spoke again, her voice had become noticeably quieter. I realized someone had entered my office while I was gardening. Mr. Dawson leaned forward. Grandma continued, "My financial folders had been moved." She looked down briefly. Nothing was missing. Another pause, but someone had been looking. I could barely breathe. Then came the sentence that changed everything. I decided that day to test my family. I looked at the screen in disbelief. "Test us." Grandma nodded as though she knew exactly how strange that sounded. So I created two plans. She held up two folders. One was blue, one was red. The first plan was the one everyone expected. She set the blue folder aside. The second, she rested her hand on the red folder, was the one that reflected my true wishes. Mr. Dawson suddenly stood up. "What?" He stopped himself. Grandma looked into the camera one last time before the recording unexpectedly cut to black. There was no ending, no explanation, just silence. Mr. Dawson stared at the monitor. I stared at him. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. If there were two plans, I couldn't even finish the sentence. Mr. Dawson slowly reached for the keyboard. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "I think we need to find out which one I actually read." Neither of us spoke for almost a full minute. The office suddenly felt too small. I kept replaying Grandma's words in my head. I created two plans. There was only one question that mattered now. Which plan had become her official will? Mr. Dawson finally broke the silence. "Arthur, I need to check every document your grandmother signed during the last year. You think the wrong one was filed? I don't know. You've handled estate law for 30 years. I know. So how could this happen?" He rubbed his forehead. "That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out." He disappeared into a records room while I sat staring at the frozen image on his computer screen. Grandma's face, calm, certain, almost as if she'd expected this day to come. 20 minutes later, Mr. Dawson returned carrying 3 thick binders and a storage box. He spread everything across the conference table. We're going through every revision. For the next 2 hours, we compared signatures, dates, witness forms, and handwritten notes. Most of it made no sense to me, but it clearly did to him. Around noon, he stopped turning pages. His expression changed. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out 2 nearly identical copies of Grandma's estate plan. "They're both genuine." I leaned closer. "They look exactly the same." "Not exactly. He pointed to the dates. One had been signed 8 months before Grandma passed away, the other only 6 weeks before her death. The newer one is the one I read at the estate meeting. So that's the valid will. Normally, he paused. Ah, yes, my heart sank again. Then he flipped to another page. This is strange. What? The witness signatures. I looked down. There were 2 names. Neither belonged to people I recognized. I thought you witnessed wills yourself. I usually do, but not always. He frowned. I've never worked with either of these witnesses. Could Grandma have found someone else? Possible, but unlikely. He kept studying the page. Then he reached for his phone. I need to make a call. He stepped outside. 10 minutes later, he came back looking even more concerned. I contacted one of the witnesses, and he says he's never met your grandmother. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. What? He says the signature isn't his. The room went completely silent. I stared at him. You mean, I'm saying one witness believes his signature was forged. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If that's true, he nodded slowly. The validity of the will could be challenged. I immediately thought of Ryan. No, Mr. Dawson looked at me. I don't know who did this. But somebody submitted legal documents containing at least one questionable signature. Neither of us wanted to say the obvious possibility out loud. That evening, I drove to Mom's house. She opened the door before I even knocked. Arthur, you were right. She frowned. About what? Something happened before Grandma died. We sat at the kitchen table while I told her everything. The recording, the 2 estate plans, the suspicious signatures. Mom covered her mouth. Oh my God. When I finished, she sat quietly for several seconds. Then she said something I'd never heard before. There was an argument. I looked up. What argument? About 2 months before Eleanor passed. Between who? Ryan and your grandmother. I blinked. You never told me. I promised her I wouldn't. What happened? Mom looked guilty. I came by unexpectedly. She took a slow breath. I could hear them through the open kitchen window. What were they saying? I didn't hear everything. She looked down at her coffee. But I heard Ryan say, she closed her eyes, remembering, if you don't trust me now, don't expect me to help later. I frowned. Help with what? I don't know. What did Grandma say? Mom's voice became quieter. She told him, love isn't measured by what someone expects to inherit. I felt chills. Did Ryan leave? He stormed out. And Grandma, she cried. Mom had to stop talking for a moment. I hadn't seen her cry in years. I drove home with more questions than answers. Emily met me at the front door. You look exhausted. I am. Over dinner. I filled her in. She listened carefully without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one simple question. Did Ryan ever have access to Grandma's paperwork? I don't know. She thought for a second. No. What? You do know. I do? She nodded. You told me something years ago. I searched my memory. Then it came back. About 9 months before Grandma died, Ryan had convinced her to let him install a new computer because her old one was too slow. He set up all her passwords, I said quietly. Emily nodded, and probably organized her files. Neither of us said another word. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. I hesitated before answering. Hello. His voice sounded unusually calm. I heard you've been talking to Dawson. I froze. Who told you that? He called me. That surprised me. What did he say? He asked a few questions about Grandma's paperwork. Ryan laughed softly. You know what this looks like, don't you? What? It looks like you're trying to overturn Grandma's wishes because you didn't like the outcome. I'm trying to understand what happened. What happened is simple. His voice became firmer. Grandma trusted me. Did she? There was a long silence. Finally, he said, "Be careful, Arthur." Is that a threat? No. His tone remained strangely controlled. It's advice. He hung up. I stared at my phone. Emily looked at me. What did he want? I slowly lowered the phone onto the table. For the first time in my life, I said quietly, my little brother sounded like someone I didn't know. Just as I finished speaking, another notification appeared on my screen. This one was from Mr. Dawson. Only 6 words. I found the second witness, and according to his message, she was ready to tell us exactly who had asked her to sign the will. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Grandma's voice. Love isn't measured by what someone expects to inherit. By 8 the next morning, I was back in Mr. Dawson's office. He looked like he'd been there all night. A legal pad covered with notes sat beside his coffee. So, I asked, what did the second witness say? He exhaled slowly. Her name is Linda Harper. He slid a business card across the table. She's a mobile notary. Did she witness Grandma's signature? No. What? She says she witnessed a signature. I frowned. I don't understand. Mr. Dawson opened his notebook. Linda told me Ryan contacted her 6 weeks before your grandmother passed away. My stomach tightened. He told her his grandmother was recovering from a minor illness and couldn't travel. That's common enough, I said. It is. So what happened? He scheduled a visit to the farmhouse. And Linda had written detailed notes about every appointment she handled. According to those notes, when she arrived, Ryan met her outside before she ever entered the house. He said his grandmother tired easily, Mr. Dawson explained. So he asked Linda to keep the appointment brief. Did she see Grandma sign? That's the problem. He looked me straight in the eye. She says an elderly woman signed the documents. I frowned. So, she also says that woman introduced herself as Eleanor. Something about that sentence bothered me. Then it hit me. My grandmother never introduced herself as Eleanor. Mr. Dawson nodded. Not to strangers. Never. Everyone called her Eleanor. She always introduced herself as Ellie. Always. It was one of those tiny habits that never changed. Linda had even written that detail in her notes because she thought it sounded unusually formal for a family visit. So who signed? I whispered. I don't know. Could Linda identify her? She says she'd recognize her if she saw her again. I felt my pulse quicken. Mr. Dawson reached into another folder. I asked her to look at several photographs. He handed me the page. There were 6 women around the same age. One was Grandma. Another made me stop cold. I recognized her immediately. She was our great-aunt Margaret, Grandma's older sister. The resemblance between them had always been remarkable. Same silver hair, same height, same glasses. Even as kids, Ryan and I sometimes mixed up old family photos. I looked up. Linda picked Margaret. Mr. Dawson nodded once, without hesitation. I sat back in my chair. But why would Aunt Margaret pretend to be Grandma? I called her. And she admitted meeting with Ryan. My heart sank. What did she say? She insists Ryan told her the documents were related to medical insurance. I closed my eyes. Oh, no. She claims she never read what she signed. Did she know she was pretending to be Grandma? Mr. Dawson shook his head. She says Ryan joked that the notary always confused the sisters as anyway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Aunt Margaret wasn't a criminal mastermind. She was 89 years old, trusting, forgetful, and according to Mr. Dawson, devastated after learning what might have happened. "This keeps getting worse," I muttered. "It does. But none of this proves Ryan forged the will." "No," Mr. Dawson agreed. "It proves the signing ceremony deserves very close examination." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He listened for less than 30 seconds. Then he thanked the caller and hung up. "What now?" He looked at me. "The bank. What about it?" "They confirmed something unusual." He opened another file. "3 months before your grandmother died." He paused. "Someone tried to transfer nearly $800,000 out of one of her investment accounts." I stared at him. "What?" "The transaction never went through." "Why not?" "Because your grandmother personally called the bank and cancelled it." My mouth went dry. "Who requested the transfer?" "They won't tell me. Privacy laws." "But they did confirm something else." "What?" "The request came through online using your grandmother's account credentials." Emily's question from the night before echoed in my head. "Who set up all her passwords?" "Ryan." I suddenly remembered something else. About a year earlier, Grandma had laughed because she couldn't remember any of her new computer passwords. Ryan had smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've got them written down." At the time, it sounded helpful. Now, it sounded very different. That afternoon, Mr. Dawson arranged a meeting. Not in court. Not yet. He wanted one final chance to hear Ryan's explanation before the legal process began. Ryan arrived wearing a navy polo shirt and the same confident expression I'd seen since the funeral. He glanced at me. "You've been busy. So have you." Mr. Dawson interrupted before either of us could continue. "I'd like to discuss several inconsistencies regarding Eleanor's final estate documents." Ryan smiled politely. "What inconsistencies?" "The witness signatures." Ryan shrugged. "I'm not a lawyer." "The attempted bank transfer." "I don't know anything about that." "The video recording." For the first time, Ryan's smile disappeared. "What video?" Mr. Dawson watched him carefully. "The one your grandmother left for Arthur." Ryan blinked. "What did she say?" I answered before Mr. Dawson could. "She said she created 2 estate plans." Ryan didn't respond. He simply stared at me. Then he quietly asked, "Did she finish the recording?" "No." A strange expression crossed his face. It lasted less than a second. Relief. Tiny. Almost impossible to notice. But I saw it. He thought the recording had ended before Grandma revealed something. And that was the moment I realized. My brother wasn't afraid of losing the money. He was afraid of something else entirely. Something Grandma had intended to expose. Just then, Mr. Dawson reached into his briefcase. "I believe," he said calmly, "it's time everyone saw the rest of the footage." Ryan's face went completely pale. Ryan stared at the briefcase as though it contained a loaded weapon. "The rest of the footage?" he asked. Mr. Dawson nodded. "After you left yesterday, my assistant recovered additional data from the flash drive." I looked at him in surprise. "You didn't tell me." "I wanted to verify it first." He placed the flash drive on the conference table. The recording didn't actually end. The video file became corrupted near the end, and only part of it played during our first attempt. We sent it to a digital recovery specialist this morning. Ryan shifted in his chair. "I don't see what that has to do with me." "Then I'm sure you won't mind watching it." No one spoke. Mr. Dawson clicked the mouse. The screen faded from black. Grandma appeared again in the same chair. This time, the recording picked up exactly where it had stopped. She rested one hand on the red folder. "If you're seeing this," she said, "then Mr. Dawson has probably discovered there were two estate plans." She smiled sadly. "I expect that may cause confusion." She reached beside her chair and held up another envelope. "So let me explain." She opened it and removed several photographs. "A few months ago, I began noticing things that frightened me. The first photo showed her home office. Desk drawers were slightly open. File folders had been moved. I knew someone had been searching through my financial papers. She placed that photo down. I didn't know who. The next photograph appeared. It showed the login screen of her online banking account. I asked the bank to record every unsuccessful access attempt. She looked directly into the camera. They told me someone repeatedly tried to log in using an old password. Ryan lowered his eyes. Grandma continued. I confronted Ryan. The room felt frozen. He admitted trying to help organize my finances. She sighed. But he couldn't explain why he was trying to access accounts I specifically asked him to leave alone. I glanced toward my brother. He didn't move. I loved Ryan. Grandma's voice softened. And because I loved him, I wanted to believe him. She paused for several seconds. But trust isn't something you can demand. It has to be protected. She folded her hands. So I made a difficult decision. I instructed Mr. Dawson to prepare a second estate plan, the one you first heard. My heart skipped. It was never meant to become my final will. Mr. Dawson slowly closed his eyes. Grandma continued. It was a safeguard. I wanted to know whether anyone would try to replace my true instructions. She looked straight into the camera. If the wrong version is ever presented after my death, she took a slow breath. Then you'll know someone interfered. No one in the room moved. I don't think any of us were even breathing. Grandma reached for the red folder. This, she smiled, is my actual final will. She opened it. My estate is to be divided equally between Arthur and Ryan. Tears immediately filled my eyes. The farmhouse is to remain in the family. If neither grandson wishes to live there, it shall be sold, and the proceeds divided equally. She laughed softly. I've watched those two boys argue over baseball cards, bicycles, and the lost slice of pie. I refuse to let them destroy each other over money. Then her expression became more serious than I'd ever seen it. If Ryan has made mistakes, I pray he admits them. And if Arthur is the one watching this, she smiled gently, please don't let anger become your inheritance. The recording ended with the same warm smile I had known since childhood. The room was completely silent. Mr. Dawson finally spoke. I've already contacted the probate court. Ryan didn't say a word. The recovered recording, the witness testimony, and the discrepancies surrounding the execution of the later document are more than enough to suspend distribution of the estate while the court reviews the evidence. Ryan slowly stood. His shoulders, which had been squared with confidence ever since the funeral, seemed to collapse. I never wanted to hurt you, he said quietly. I looked at him. Then why? He swallowed hard. I got into debt. How much? He stared at the floor. More than $1 million. Even Mom, who had quietly joined us earlier that morning, gasped. It started with bad investments, Ryan admitted, then loans. Then I kept borrowing to cover the previous loans. He rubbed his face. When I realized Grandma's estate could solve everything, his voice broke. I convinced myself I'd pay everyone back eventually. But first I needed control. So you manipulated her? I told myself I was protecting the family. He laughed bitterly. I believed my own lies. For the first time since all of this had begun, I didn't see the confident younger brother who thought he'd won. I saw a scared man who had spent months digging a hole so deep he could no longer see daylight. The court proceedings took several months. In the end, the later will was declared invalid because of the compromised execution process and the overwhelming evidence that it did not reflect Grandma's genuine final intentions. Her true estate plan, the one she had described in the recovered video, was admitted instead. Ryan didn't go to prison. The investigators concluded there wasn't enough evidence to prove every step had been part of a criminal conspiracy beyond a reasonable doubt. But he did lose his position at work after the investigation became public. He sold his house to pay creditors. He also apologized to every member of our family. Some accepted it, some didn't. As for me, forgiveness didn't happen overnight. In fact, it took almost 2 years before Ryan and I could sit at the same table without talking about lawyers, money, or Grandma. One Sunday afternoon, we met at the farmhouse. The same porch, the same swing, the same fields Grandma loved. Ryan handed me Grandpa's old pocket watch. "You should keep it," he said. "I know she wanted you to have it." I looked across the property. "You know what Grandma really left us?" He shook his head. "A choice. To let money become the end of our family," I smiled sadly, "or the lesson that finally saves it." Today, the farmhouse still belongs to both of us. Neither of us lives there. Instead, every Thanksgiving, our entire family gathers around Grandma's old kitchen table, the one Ryan tracked down and bought back from the antique dealer who'd purchased it after the funeral. The first thing we do before dinner is play Grandma's final video, not because of the inheritance, not because of the court case, but because every year her last words remind us of something worth far more than $3 million. Don't let anger become your inheritance. I've never forgotten them, and I never will.